One, two, three, four. What up, y'all? Babylon 5 podcast. How you doing? It's your boy, Jermaine Event. Back again, episode 38. How are you guys? Hope everybody's staying well, being good to each other. Uh, you know, just being good human beings. I shared this video the other day. It was a clip of Rose Namajunas when she beat after she beat Joanna Jędrzejczyk, and she's like, "This belt don't mean nothing. Just be good people, just hug each other and be good." Like, you know, that's some real shit right there. That's the shit that your boy lives by. I hope this recording, once it's done, I can listen. Right now, so I don't know what's going on, but sometimes I'll turn on my DAW and I can actually no. So even without turning on my DAW, I can hear my microphone. I can hear my microphone even when I turn off my DAW, which shouldn't be a thing because I don't have a track enabled, so I shouldn't be able to hear myself through my microphone. But I have been lately, so right now it's an echo. And I think sometimes it's been like this where it's been an echo, and then when I hear the audio, I think it usually isn't a problem. No, you guys can't hear this. But I didn't know, so because for the past few weeks, I've been trying to record video with this. See, now it just kind of went away. Now that other echo just kind of like right then went away. That was weird. So now it sounds kind of normal. Maybe somebody was tapping in, recording this shit. Who knows? But it just suddenly right there went away. Now it sounds normal. So I'm going to stop talking about that. How you guys doing? Shit just sounded weird before. Like, that's why I didn't record audio. That's why I'm only recording audio for this episode, because when I was trying to just set up the video just now, it just looked pretty weird. It sounded pretty weird. It was a weird noise. Along with the echo, there was a weird noise. And now that extra microphone, that other echo I was hearing, just randomly disappeared. See, I don't know what's going on with this laptop. It's like this fucking MacBook. It'll have like phantom fucking apps just on in the background somehow. And then they just shut off. There should be no reason that I was able to hear my voice. And there should have been no echo. And now here we are. I digress. If you guys are patrons, if you want to be patrons, there are no patrons, I don't think. But you guys can be my very first patron. Could be go to patreon.com/Babylon5pod. I think I'm going backwards. So why don't we jump to the front and give you guys the social medias. If you want to follow the podcast on Instagram and Twitter, it's at Babylon5pod. If you want to follow my personal accounts, it's at my name's Jermaine. You can email the podcast at Babylon5podcast@gmail.com. You can listen, or you can follow this podcast at Babylon5.podbean.com. And you can just as well, ladies and gentlemen, just as fucking well, listen to this podcast on Podbean, Stitcher, Spotify, Apple Music, Pandora, nigga. Pretty much anywhere podcast stream. I just paused there because I noticed I just said Apple Music. And if you guys become patrons, you can watch the vlog I Digress 2, where in that, you can see it exclusively. I'm changing my notes from Apple Music to Apple Podcast. But I still said Apple Music just out of being used to it. But yeah, well, you guys should go be patrons and you can watch me do that live. That and other cool shit. I just, the I Digress is pretty much all off the script. I guess this is somewhat scripted right here, but I got an outline. Niggas got outlines. Niggas got outlines like the barber shop. Ugh. Yeah. And if you niggas got Xbox One, go ahead and if you want to play with a nigga, you can add me, become my friend. I think that's how you do it. Become my friend My gamer tag is SauceBoss414. I feel like an old man. I'm sitting here like, I think that's how you do it. With the dinger dangers and the who's a what's it's. Yeah, just add me on Xbox One. My gamer tag once again is SauceBoss414. You can go ahead and check out the merchandise. It's teespring.com/BOFpod-shop. You can watch me play with myself at twitch.tv/Babylon5. And you can, once again, as I said before, I started it out with this. Check, become patrons. Why not? If you're listening right now, if you're enjoying this, you get extra vlogs. You get, you're not going to get a video for this podcast because, as I was just mentioning, there's issues with the microphone there. There's just issues with this laptop for whatever reason. There was just that echo. And it was like when I opened up the video program at that point, it was like the microphone was being accessed by like 3 different applications at once. And it was creating this crazy noise. So so for that reason, you're not getting video for this, but you're going to get I Digress 3 and so on and so forth. I forgot to upload some unreleased music. I'm going to put Kitchen on there pretty soon. Maybe today, if I can remember, I'm going to upload Kitchen. Just, I'm throwing you guys some exclusives. Go to patreon.com/Babylon5. Become a patron. Why not? Why not? If you're enjoying this content, go ahead. Become a patron. Go to patreon.com/Babylon5pod. Today, ladies and gentlemen. I'm so sorry. Just to speak on I Digress, a little moment in I Digress. There was a moment that I mentioned. I'm not going to go fully into details because why would I do that? You guys can go become patrons and you'll hear the story. But I was talking about this new coworker, and I mentioned at one point, like, I don't care about the drama, just like show up to work. And earlier today at work, the nigga showed up to work at the wrong time. And I told the nigga, I was like, hey, bruh, you here at the wrong time. And he's like, what? Nah, I was supposed to be here at this time. And I'm like, oh, you probably didn't get the updated schedule. It changes sometimes, like, on Saturday night. And I showed him the schedule, and I was like, yeah, you're not supposed to be here for a couple hours. And he's like, what? I was not told of this change. I'm already here. If that's the way it is, then I'm not coming back till 5. I'm like, nigga, you supposed to be here at 11. He's like, I ain't coming back till 5. So, so I was like, at one point, I was like, in the I Digress 2, I was like, I don't care what it is, just show up for work. But yeah, niggas like, now here you go. It's like, nigga, like days later, the nigga is like, I'll show up when I want to show up. So that's just hilarious. We'll see how that turns out. But go ahead and become a patron. And you can check out that vlog, I Digress, for all my kooky stories, if you will. I'm just going to keep this little trend going. It's a pretty good week for me, or a pretty good day for me. Pretty good Saturday yesterday. But, me being the MMA fan I am, like last week, the episode was all MMA oriented. And this one's going to be the same, ladies and gentlemen. Why even keep going into the news of everything that's going on right now for a little while? Let's try to step away from that. We're going to pause one moment. But yeah, why even keep getting into that like week after week? So prevalent, so negative. Even on Facebook just today, just for example, I posted an article, I shared an article that stated since Texas has reopened, there's been 3 straight days of 1,000 new cases. And this guy, he comments about it saying, well, yeah, that's going to happen, but we can't just not reopen the country. And my stance, as you guys should know if you're listening here, is why not, my nigga? Keep it closed. Keep it closed. But when I asked this man for his sources, he's claiming, he's like, I'm not a sheep. The media is lying to you. The hospitals are empty. And I'm like, all right, cool, bro. But just like, can you just tell me the sources? So like, I know where to find some real shit. Like, clearly I don't. You're telling me right now that I'm looking at the wrong shit. Please give me your sources so I can then become enlightened. Nigga ain't had no sources. He posted the CDC numbers that said there was over 1 million cases and like just about 80,000 people had died. And he was like, these numbers don't concern me. So like, it's like if you just don't care, then you just don't care. At that point, you don't have an argument. Because when you don't have any like sources, if you're like he said, like the hospitals are empty. I was like, bro, I keep seeing people like him sharing these, sharing that statement, but never any facts to support it. And I'm like, just please tell me your sources on that one comment. And he never responded to that statement. It's just pretty interesting. And I got like people on my Facebook who have expressed similar views to him. I feel like people are seeing this. You're more than welcome to respond. If you feel like you have sources, then share them. But if you feel like at the same time that if you're embarrassed to share your sources, what the fuck are we talking about? Share your sources. Don't just say, oh, hey, don't trust that. Don't trust what you're hearing over here. That's all bullshit. Oh, well, where are you getting your shit from? Oh, I can't tell you. Oh, you can't tell me? Because you'll look fucking silly if you tell anybody where you're getting your information from. Oh, like, it's fucking silly, all right? It's fucking silly. I remember when I was telling niggas about just this one nigga who he does these numbers games, and he follows like random shit in the news, and like with Gematria, he just makes these predictions or whatever, and just talking about something like that, I'm like, this is a weird source right here to go to for anything. But I used to go, because the main source that I go for him, I guess, would be like his betting odds. I would see. So like, sometimes he would be pretty accurate with his predictions on certain players. Because if you're playing fantasy football, he would say, like, based off of these numbers, this player, it'll be like a random like third string player, and it'll be like based off of these numbers here, this player is going to have a big game. And sure enough, that player would have a big game. But it's like the other shit on that website, all the other shit he was talking about is like, yo, if anybody saw this shit, it'd be kind of embarrassing. And that's where you motherfuckers are for the most part. Either share your sources so we can see how fucking silly you are, or just like don't comment those silly fucking ideas that you're pulling out of nowhere. They're silly. That's silly, young man. UFC. I didn't want to go on that spiel, and I ended up there anyway. So let's move along. Move along. Like something. I don't know them lyrics. I'm a real nigga. I only listen to real bands like Creed, Puddle of Mud, my nigga, Hinder. Nigga, I listen to real ass bands. Nigga. Fucking hardcore rock. Fucking kid rock. Nigga. I ain't talking about no poser shit, nigga. I'm talking Avril Lavigne, nigga. What are we talking about, nigga? Get the fuck out of here, my nigga. I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. So, moving along. Oh, yeah. Okay, we're moving along. Move along, move along. Yada, yada. I digress. Catch me on Patreon. UFC 249, ladies and gentlemen. If you did not see it, I thought it's pretty funny because, I always made sure to throw UFC in these episodes, or MMA, combat sports in some way or fashion. I always tried to make sure to throw like my predictions for fights. I always try to mention it. And if I didn't in a few episodes, like after I listened to it back, I'm like, fuck, I forgot to talk about this upcoming card, and that's just something I keep to myself. So I've always tried to keep MMA in this podcast no matter what I'm talking about for the week. And I just think it's pretty fucking awesome that this is the only sport that's going on. Pretty much the only real thing to watch is fucking the same thing that I've been trying to get motherfuckers to watch for fucking years. I've been trying to get you motherfuckers to watch MMA for years. And now it's the only thing to watch. Fuck yeah. So that's why last week was mostly MMA, and this week is, last week was all MMA, and this week is going to be MMA, my nigga. MMA, my nigga. For the Pettis, my nigga. So don't, Anthony Pettis is number 15 at welterweight, and Cerrone is unranked at 170 because he doesn't fight at 170 anymore. Other than this fight where he's losing, I'm watching the prelims right now. In order to watch the main card, I'd have to pay $70, so it's not. I mean, it was last night, nigga. I already seen what happened. I ain't finna buy it again. Wink, wink. So leading up to UFC 249, leading up to the Friday night, after the face-offs, the weigh-ins, all that jazz, Jacare Souza and two of his cornermen test positive for COVID, or for COVID-19. They test positive. Apparently, the situation, from what I heard, was the fighters were given a test. They were given 3 different tests that there was different time frames and would tell you different things. There's like a temperature test, a swab test, and like there's one where they stick something in your nose, one where they test your saliva apparently, and like some other test is from what I'm told. I think there's a blood test also. So apparently they were given one of those tests that would tell them like within 24 hours if they were positive, and they were given that test on like Wednesday. And apparently no one was given the results of that test. And then they were all given that test again Friday, the day of the weigh-ins. And within hours, Jacare Souza and 2 of his cornermen test positive. So that fight ended up being canceled before. And that's a pretty good thing, because the last thing you would want is for today, Sunday morning, the day after the fight, or Sunday evening after the fight, you definitely don't want to find out right now. You don't want Uriah Hall and Jacare Souza to have went at it in the octagon, went to war, and then this morning you're like, oh, one of those fighters tested positive, and he fought in that octagon, bled all over the place, and then multiple more fights went on in that octagon following him. So that's the last thing that you wanted. So it looks better on the UFC that was caught the day before the card. Thankfully that was caught when it was caught, because the last thing you would want is for him to have fought and then find out. So I just think it was interesting, because I feel like what people don't really talk about is like people try to condemn the UFC for putting on the event still. You know what I'm saying? And I feel like there's definitely pressure from like UFC, I mean from like ESPN. There's definitely pressure from like Disney. If you guys are paying attention to the situation, like Comcast, I'm pretty sure it's Comcast, is talked about not paying Disney or not paying ESPN, that is, which is owned by Disney, because they're not showing any sports. They got paid $450 million last month and showed zero sports. So they had like no programming, no new programming other than The Last Dance. And that's why they had to pretty much rush The Last Dance forward. That wasn't supposed to come up until I think about August is when The Last Dance was supposed to come out. And they moved it forward because of situations like this. So I think that definitely plays a part of this going on regardless. There's the parent company of UFC Endeavor, that's pretty much going bankrupt because of this situation. It was already in bad shape prior to the pandemic. So there's pressure everywhere to put on the show. And it's like, regardless, I thought beforehand, if there was a test going into it, especially the day before, after they've already had weigh-ins and face-offs, I thought that it would definitely be shut down. But I see, as I look more into it and all the other factors going into it, I see now why you would definitely not stop that fight, you know? Just doesn't make any sense from their viewpoint. And when I'm watching the pay-per-view, they kept showing tweets of all these celebrities and other fighters throughout the fights, throughout all the fights in the main card, maybe even some of the preliminaries, but I'm thinking just the main card, because I'm not seeing anything right now with Anthony Pettis and Cerrone, but probably throughout. They would show celebrity tweets and things about that. So people were watching, people were endorsing. It's pretty hype that they're back, but they had to, because of all that other shit. They have to put on this show on Wednesday because of all this other shit. They have to put on the show following on that Saturday. Pretty unprecedented shit that they're doing right now, but they're doing it because all these other people they have their backs against the wall. So that's how it is with that. Jacare and Uriah Hall. Dana White claimed Jacare and Jacare and Uriah Hall are both going to be paid regardless. So that's a good look on him for that. As I'm watching it, I'm watching just the pre-show, and I'm like, fuck. It feels really good to see Joe Rogan, John Anik, Daniel Cormier, fucking Megan O'Leary just talk about all the fucking pre-things, like Michelle Watterson is blah, 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 and then like they come off this. It was just like the other things out. I didn't realize how much I missed all the other things outside of the actual fights until watching that, and then it just felt really good to just like have all that. It's pretty good. So we're going to talk about the fights right now. Wrote down notes briefly. This might be a short episode. We'll see. If it is, it is. Oh, well, my nigga. Oh, well. And we're going to start from the first fight. We're going to get all the way to the main event. Because why not? So Sam Alvey versus Ryan Spann. I said last week I was going with Ryan Spann. And then like when I made my prediction on Instagram, I went against some of this. I think I went against and I chose Sam Alvey. Or no, actually I went with Ryan Spann in there. So I actually stuck with Ryan Spann. And so I went with Alvey was the underdog, and I went with Alvey. Like my heart shifted right before the fight, and I thought Alvey would take it. I thought Alvey took the first round. Alvey almost got the finish in the third, but couldn't really step on the gas. It was a pretty good fight, but I felt like there was just like a lot of hype around Ryan Spann, and he had some flashy moves, but he tired out pretty quickly, and then he was just like a target. But LV couldn't really step on the gas when he needed to. So Spann won via split decision. LV almost knocked him out there. All right, he almost knocked him out in the third. I think a couple times he almost knocked him out there. So I think I was right in changing my when I looked at the UFC stats and I'm like, dude, LV could definitely win this fight. I looked at the stats and I was like, I don't even understand these odds. And then as you saw that split decision, it was like those odds made absolutely no sense. It was a much better fight, and Spann very well could have lost that fight. It was a split decision. So, somebody definitely saw that fight for LV. When I looked at the stats, I saw no reason why LV couldn't win that fight, and he was in there. He's a veteran. He was in there, and I think Spann's a little overhyped. That's just my that's my assessment. Bryce Mitchell versus Charles Rosa. I went with I said on the podcast I was going Bryce Mitchell for jiu-jitsu. And then when I looked at the UFC stats, I leaned more toward Charles Rosa. Like the night before the show, Friday night, when I looked at the stats. But as I said, dude, Bryce Mitchell just dominated with the jiu-jitsu. It was just all over him. And see, one aspect of this that I want to just mention right here, and I'll touch back on later, is Bryce Mitchell would not have been able to dominate Rosa with his jiu-jitsu in the way that he was if there was an audience there at that point in the card. Those people would have booed until the ref stood them up every single time. But because there was no audience there, and it was very entertaining, all the things that he was trying on the ground, he attempted like 2 twisters. Like, he attempted a twister in the first round. Second round, he attempts another twister. Pretty sure by the third, he attempted another twister. And I don't think any of that would have been able to go on if there was an audience there, because just with all the grappling, they would have booed until the ref stood that up. So I felt like that was amazing. Bryce Mitchell dominates Charles Rosa with the with his jiu-jitsu, and he almost gets him with a twister, which is just something Bryce Mitchell is known for, just catching people with a twister, and he almost got him a few times, but Rosa was pretty tough. So shout out to him. I felt like that was a pretty good fight, and yeah, it benefited off the fact that there was no audience. Meanwhile, while this fight is going on, Conor McGregor and Nate Diaz are arguing on Instagram apparently, and I don't know. I don't know what Nate Diaz says. I don't know what he said because I apparently didn't see it as noteworthy. I didn't write it down here. But what Conor McGregor said, he told Nate Diaz to shut up and sign the contract. So let's watch that situation. Hopefully we get Conor and Nate at 170 on Fight Island, wherever the fuck that is. Dana, just a little side note here, or not, I just mentioned, Dana said that they did not buy Fight Island, that they just they got permission to use that island. Like, someone else already owns it and they're just using that island. So the UFC isn't his boss, or Dana White isn't his fucking boss as I thought he was. He's still fucking boss. He went and was like, no, we got Fight Island. They selling merch for it. Said they about to set that shit up ASAP. About to set up some fights. Yeah. All right, next fight here. We have Vicente Luque versus Nico Price 2. When I looked at the stats, I had Nico Price. I think last week I said I was going to go with Vicente Luque. I went against what my heart told me pretty much in a lot of these fights the night before, and I wish I had stuck with it. But I had Nico Price going into it. Vicente Luque wins by doctor stoppage going into I think in the second round. He just fucked him up, fucked up his eye pretty bad. And I forget what the hit was, but I remember when I saw it, I was like, if the fucking ref sees that, he's gonna stop the fight and have a doctor look at it, and then it's over. And sure enough, the ref got a look at that, called the ref in, and it was over. Cause he couldn't see. His eye was completely swollen shut. So I was like, man, if the ref fucking sees that, it's over. And sure enough, he shut it down. Unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, he shut it down. So Vicente Luque picks up another win here. From what I just heard, I just watched it back. They were saying he's won the last 7 out of 8, and the one loss would be the one he just had against Wonder Boy, which I'd say that's a pretty good company. If I'm going to lose to somebody, and that one loss out of my last 8 fights is Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, and you weren't finished, no matter how much he took a lot of punishment in that fight against Wonder Boy, and he was not finished. So I would say it says a lot about Vicente Luque, and getting the doctor stoppage here, I'd say, also says a lot. Let's see. I'm just trying to put some fights on in the background. Something. How about Cyber Kunitskaya? However you say it. Anywho. So, next fight. Moving on. We got Michelle Waterson versus Carla Esparza. I had Carla Esparza going into this. I had it Michelle Waterson 2-0 going into the third. All right, I had Waterson winning it going into the third, 2 rounds to 1. And I was just watching the whole prelims over again, and so as they're reading off the scorecards, and they show the 2 fighters like faces side by side, Michelle Waterson is like smiling the whole time. She has her sponsors, like it's like a water bottle or whatever. She's holding it in her hand, ready to like hold that up as she like celebrates her victory. And Carla Esparza looks like sad as they're reading off the scores. So I had it 2-0 going into the third, and as they're reading off the scores, like Waterson clearly thought she won that fight, and Esparza clearly thought she had lost that fight, but Carla Esparza won via split decision. So that was a pretty questionable decision, but that's just how the cookie crumbles. If you don't finish the fight, then you leave it in the judge's hands, and it is what it is at that point. It is what it is. So moving on, you had Alexei Oleinik versus Fabricio Verdum. I was listening back, and I said last week that I was going with Verdum, and I was like, why the fuck would I say that? I was like, as I went and looked at the stats, I was like, dude, Oleinik's definitely going to win this fight. And sure enough, he won via split decision. He was all over him with the stand-up. And it was like, Verdum hasn't been in there in a long time, so it was like, they were saying it was just taking him a while to get up. Like, everything was just clearly too fast for him. He hasn't been there in a while, and he wasn't there with the same speed as Verdum. So that's just what it was. When I looked at the stats and everything, I was like, dude, Oleinik's definitely going to win this. And he did. So I flip-flopped on a lot of it going into it, unfortunately. But I was right leading up to it, going into it, thinking about that Oleinik would win that fight. I chose him the day before. I stuck with Anthony Pettis. We're moving on to our next fight here. The main event for the prelims was Anthony Pettis versus Donald Cerrone. I'm always Team Pettis, and as I've said here, anybody that trains from Milwaukee, if you are from Milwaukee or you train here, I root for you. So, I'm 100% Team Pettis. And topped with the fact that this is a rematch and that Pettis finished Cerrone in the first round with body kicks pretty quickly. I saw no reason not to stick with Pettis here. And I gave Pettis the first round. They both were just like clearly they had a lot to prove in there. And I think after the second round, yeah, they were going to war. So after the second round, Cerrone like yelled out, "Hey!" to Pettis. Pettis turns to him, and Cerrone's like, "Fuck yeah!" And they hug, and they head back to the corners and prepare for the last round. That was a pretty fucking cool moment. They were going to war in there. Matter of fact, it was just on, but I wasn't paying attention. Like, now that I'm reading these notes over, I'm like, fuck, that was a good fight. I just was on, and I was not paying attention. But they were going to war. They hugged right before the third round, and it came back in. And what I love here, another little side note, you can hear when you can hear the coaches yelling. Duke Rufus was kept screaming. He's like, aim for his chest, you'll catch his chin. Like, he kept, like, just hearing the advice there was pretty fucking awesome. But that was one thing that I fucking love that Duke Rufus kept saying. Aim for his chest, you'll catch his chin. And yeah, Pettis dominated him, and I feel like he won the third round also. Not dominated, but Pettis won a unanimous decision, so I gave all 3 rounds to Pettis, and sure enough, that was how the judges saw it, unanimously. Cerrone falls to 4 straight losses after this, so that is what it is there. Shout out to your boy Anthony Pettis for the victory, at 170. Why not? I think he should stay at that weight. He looks pretty good at that weight. And if he continues to train the way, if it's beneficial for him, why not? Stay at 170, train the way that's better for you, and let's do some things. Why not? Moving on, we got Greg Hardy versus Yorgan De Castro, which was the first fight on the main card. Let's say for technical difficulties, I didn't really see a lot of that fight. And Greg Hardy, I saw that, like, Yorgan De Castro hurt his foot. Greg Hardy checked a leg kick, and apparently, like, Yorgan De Castro apparently, like, broke his foot, broke his toes or something, and pretty much just stopped swinging. He stopped throwing punches, and Greg Hardy just pretty much beat him up the best he could for 2 rounds straight. So Greg Hardy won via unanimous decision. I searched Greg Hardy, and I saw, like, just fucking ass clowns. Like, I hate the way that the media tries to talk about Greg Hardy. And I saw the day before the fight, it was like, Greg Hardy is another example of why some people shouldn't get a second chance. Go fuck yourself, dude. He's fucking doing great, dude. He's fucking doing great. Who is it? Yahoo Sports, dude. Fuck Yahoo Sports. How about that? Greg Hardy's doing great. He deserved that win. And, yeah, he's getting better every time we see him. He looked good in there. And, yeah, he adjusts with you can hear the corner, but you can also hear Joe Rogan and mainly Daniel Cormier shouting out advice and adjustments that people should make. And Greg Hardy shouted out to them, thanks for the advice, and he made an adjustment. So that happened there. Moving on, you got Calvin Kattar versus Jeremy Stephens. I had Stephens. No, actually, I had Kattar. I had Kattar going into it just because Stephens, like, just how he looked in the last fight. Kattar won. Like, he splits Jeremy Stephens open with an elbow and just, like, knocks him out, apparently. Gets the TKO stoppage in the second round. So Kattar just batters. They were going to war. First round is a fucking war. And Kattar just fucking caught him with these elbows. Fucked him up in the second round. So Calvin Kattar beats Jeremy Stephens. Francis Ngannou versus Jairzinho Rozenstruik. All right, Jairzinho Rozenstruik just fought Alistair Overeem. He was getting beat up for 5 rounds straight, pretty much. And then with, like, a few seconds left in the 5th round, Jairzinho Rozenstruik catches Alistair Overeem with a counter right hook, and it splits his lip wide open, and the ref jumps in and stops the fight. Jairzinho Rozenstruik unfortunately wins that fight and calls out Francis Ngannou. All right, he calls out Francis Ngannou. He says he's going to knock out Francis Ngannou. Francis Ngannou versus Jairzinho Rozenstruik lasted 20 seconds. Me talking about this fight right now is longer than the fight. All right. Francis Ngannou knocked this fool out in probably 15 seconds, and then his body slumped over limp up against the octagon all awkwardly, and Francis is just pounding his face even more until the ref comes in and stops it. Like, it's fucking brutal. And it's just like, why do you think no one wants to fight this guy? Like, no one. You're gonna call him out. You're an undefeated fighter. And you're gonna call out Francis Ngannou, and you got knocked out in 15 seconds. Fucking limp against the side of the octagon. That's what happens when you call out Francis Ngannou. I'm pretty sure that was my prediction. First round knockout by Francis Ngannou, because that's how he wins every fight. He touches you and you go to sleep. That's just how it is. He was having a competitive fight against Alistair Overeem because Alistair Overeem put his hands on him and made him wrestle and wasn't allowing him to just get those clean shots. And then once he got that clean shot off, we saw it. It looked like Rock'em Sock'em Robots. And Jairzinho Rosenstrike called out Francis Ngannou, and he got knocked out in 15 seconds. Officially 20, but let's be real. 15 seconds. I guess Rosenstrike learned his lesson. Moving on. We got Dominic Cruz versus Henry Cejudo. I said on the podcast I had Cejudo. Then as I was looking into more things the night before, ladies and gentlemen, went with Dominic Cruz winning the belt. Cejudo started with some great leg kicks, just working the leg kicks. And it was a good first round. I would say I give it to Cejudo. In the second round, they headbutted. Cejudo and Cruz did an incidental headbutt, and it really split Cejudo open. And it's like maybe 15 seconds left in the second round, and Cejudo was just like, no, I'm fine. I don't need anybody. Like, it's fine. Like, we can just fight. And the ref's like, okay. And then he starts the fight. They start the fight again, and Cruz goes for a level change to maybe for a takedown. No, he goes for a level change because he would dip down and then do this uppercut that he was catching Henry with, but he dipped down pretty low. And as he dipped for that level change, Henry timed it perfectly, caught him with a knee, and when he hit him with that knee, and Cruz fell back, he was just making these faces, like he clearly got fucked up with that knee. And Henry jumped on him, just starts landing these perfect strikes. It's damn, how are you this fucking accurate? It's just super fast wherever, and he's just all over Cruz. Cruz is standing up, but he's not defending the punches. These are unanswered punches. Maybe he takes about 11 strikes, but he's standing up the whole time. He's still getting up. And with 2 seconds left in the round, Cruz is standing up. The ref jumps in and stops the fight. And instantly, Cruz goes at the ref because he was standing up and clearly still aware. Cejudo becomes the first person to finish Dominic Cruz in a pretty questionable stoppage with only 2 seconds left in the fight. I would say that's pretty questionable. What I think is interesting, though, is, at this point it's just speculation, but when that headbutt happened, all right, and Cejudo was bleeding pretty profusely when that headbutt happened. So when he just said to the ref, no, I'm fine, let's just keep going, and the ref just didn't have a doctor come look at that cut. He just went with Cejudo's word on it. I thought that was pretty weird. And I thought, had the doctors come in and looked at that cut, they would have stopped the fight right there. And I feel had the ref even let that fight go 2 seconds longer, had he not jumped in at that moment and stopped the fight, the doctors would have come in and looked at the cut. All right? They would have walked over and looked at the cut, and I think they would have stopped the fight, and Dominic Cruz would have become the third-time bantamweight champion, But that's not what happened. That's not how the cookie crumbled. Cejudo defeats Cruz, and Cruz, like, as they're making the announcement, Cruz, like, pulls his hand from the ref, like, he doesn't want the referee to touch him. And he pulls his hand from the ref and, like, says to him, you know you fucked up. Like, so that's interesting. We're gonna pause 1 second. Yeah. He says, you know you fucked up. So he pulls his hands from the ref, says, you know you fucked up. Sorry, I don't know. Just to say that again. Cejudo then, after the announcement of, Cejudo wins by knockout in his second, Cejudo then announces his retirement from MMA. So there's now no champion at 135 pounds. Dana White said in the post-fight show that Peter Yan will fight someone for the 135-pound belt, which I think is silly because I thought Aljamain Sterling was the number one contender before Peter Yan fought Uriah Faber, and now they're just like, whatever, it didn't happen. Like, let's not talk about it. So that's happening. Cejudo retired. I just bought this nigga's t-shirt. But it is what it is. I mean, it's not bad that I have the t-shirt and he retired. I wanted, just keep fighting. Why not? He's a great fighter. He's 33 years old. In the post-fight, he's been doing it since he's been wrestling, competing, like, pretty much week to week since he was 11. And he's finally just going to, like, try to settle down, like, have some kids and just do a regular life. Can't blame him for that. He's Olympic gold medalist, two-weight division champion. He was talking about fighting at the 145-pound and chasing that belt. But he just wants to have he wants to do something different. Says it gets stagnant, just training all the time. He's been doing it for 22 years straight, and he wants to just pretty much have a family. Who can knock him for that? I certainly won't. Cruz tears into the ref in the post-fight interview. Says he explains to the ref in the pre-fight because if you're unfamiliar, the ref goes and talks to the fighters and it's like tells them things that he expects in the fight. Like, if you're in this position, I need you to do this or I'm going to step in and stop the fight. Cruz says he's explained to this man, like, if he's in any of these situations, like, let him get knocked out. If he's still fighting back, like, do not step in. But he did it anyway. So he tears into him and says he was standing up and he doesn't believe that he was knocked out. Like, he's never been knocked out and he doesn't believe it happened last night. And I don't believe it happened either. And now Cejudo leaves the UFC. And now there's basically just two divisions with no champion because of Cejudo. So that's all the more argument that I have against having this champ shit. Like, don't do it anymore. All right, it's pretty stupid. There's no champs in the 135. There's no champ in the 125. You have no champs for two weight classes because you did this stupid shit. You could have, like, why are you letting Amanda Nunes hold these two belts like hostage? She should just hold one belt. And then you could build up another fucking... Well, it's just like, well, why doesn't somebody come beat her? But while someone is trying to beat her at 135, somebody could be a champion and building their legacy or whatever at 145 or however so she wants to do it. I think that's the belt she holds. I think it's 145 that she holds the other one. Moving on to the main event of the evening, the second championship belt on the fight, the interim 155-pound belt. I said to you guys last week and the week before that even that my prediction was that Justin Gaethje would knock out Tony Ferguson. That was my prediction, that Tony Ferguson would lose to Justin Gaethje and that we would not ever see Tony Ferguson against Khabib, the fight that's been booked for 5 times and canceled each time. I said it'll never happen. And let's get into this fight. You know, it could go either way. As I looked into it, I was like, maybe Tony could pull it off. He's got that cardio. I looked at the pictures. I saw an interview with him. He's like, I'm bringing the blades out for this one. I'm like, holy shit. And you look at the pictures of his opponents before after he fights them. And it's like, holy shit, he's about to be real violent. He's just like, he's been training for so long to fight Khabib, ready for a fight. And he's had this time to get ready for Justin. I'm like, yo, he's just been training. He's itching to fight. He's about to just bring the violence in here. I was excited. I was like, Tony probably is going to take it after I heard him say that. That's where my head went. Crazy first round, but I'd give it to Justin, right? I'd give it to Justin. Justin was just hitting him with some big shots. And they were just trading. But I was like, damn, I'd give that first round to Justin. In the second round, Justin is still hitting, landing with power. A lot of power on Tony. Tony's just like not able to get out of the way of these shots. And in the second round, Tony looks fucking worried. He has this look on his face that I've never seen on Tony Ferguson. In the second, he's taking a lot of damage by the second round. Where I'm like, holy fuck, he looks worried. He looks like he pretty much thinks he's not going to win this fight. In the second round. Ferguson, at the end of the second round, though, through the boxing, trading with a great jab, almost drops with an uppercut, almost drops Gaethje. He knocks him off balance. Gaethje was able to catch himself as he almost hit the mat and bounce up before he actually went to the ground. So it's pretty amazing. But Ferguson almost knocked him on the ass right at the end of the second. And so by the third, it was a fucking war. But Gaethje was still abusing Tony Ferguson. Abusing Tony Ferguson. And at some point in the third, Tony started to land on Justin. And he starts to break dance and just start to mock him. Trying to just get in his head and just doing some things. But I don't think it really meant anything. After the third round, Eddie Bravo says to Tony Ferguson, he was like, why don't you try an Imanari roll? You know what I'm saying? It was just a pretty much straight stand-up fight for 3 rounds, and Eddie Bravo was like, dude, try an Imanari roll, which is it's a jiu-jitsu move where you'd roll forward in a way where your legs are going to catch his leg, and then you're going to it would pull him into you down to the ground, and then you're pretty much in place for I think a heel hook or some shit like that. You're in place for a submission, whichever one it is, but it's Imanari roll. He's after 3 rounds of standing with Justin Gaethje, Eddie Bravo's like, yo, do an Imanari roll, a Hail Mary, take it to the ground. Try something other than what you're doing right now. So that's interesting. That Eddie Bravo was try an Imanari roll. Tony got hurt bad in the fourth, all right? Hurt bad from Tony. I mean, from Justin. He runs from Justin at one point in the fourth. I remember seeing that and I was like, holy fuck. Because it was oh, he's catching him. And you still think, even with the first 3 rounds, Tony Ferguson was breakdancing in the third and he's taking a lot of damage. But it's Tony usually always gets hit and then finds a way to win. But in the fourth, when I'm watching Tony run from Justin after just catching shot after shot after shot, and with no fans there, you can hear every shot. It sounds like fucking thunder, all right? You hear these shot after shot after shot, and in the fourth, Tony starts to run, all right? He starts to run from Justin, and I'm like, holy shit. This is insane. And I've never seen Tony look this battered. At this point, his face, he gets a huge cut below his eye. I think he's bleeding. He starts to get a huge cut below his left eye, and he starts bleeding over his right eye. He's getting battered. He starts to look like his opponents look after fighting him. That's what Tony starts to look like in the fourth. He's getting completely battered. At this point, I feel terrible. I want the fight stopped. As I'm seeing Tony run and he's just getting destroyed in there. It's fucking starting to get hard to watch, to be honest. It's hard to watch. All right. So 4 rounds, I had it 4-0 for Justin Gaethje, clearly, because I've never seen Tony look, and he looks fucking like, I thought he looked worried in the fucking second, and he honestly looked terrified going in there in the fifth round. And in the fifth round, he actually went for an Imanari roll, but was so fucking worn down. It was the saddest thing you probably ever seen. And Justin doesn't really care for the ground fighting, so he just like slightly moves out of the way and let Tony awkwardly stand up. What I'm not mentioning here, what I haven't mentioned, was like throughout this whole fight, Justin Gaethje is just destroying Tony Ferguson's leg. He's just fucking just hammering at him with these leg kicks. And on the other side, on the flip side of that, Justin Gaethje is constantly checking all of Tony Ferguson's leg kicks. And Tony Ferguson's leg, his shins start bleeding at this point because all of his kicks have been checked. He's bleeding. His legs have been, his knees have been destroyed. He's limping. He can barely walk. He's being battered. Just headshot. He's being fucking destroyed. I've never seen it. I feel pretty bad for him. Tony was coming off a 12-fight win streak, and now we will never see Ferguson and Khabib. I don't think that'll ever happen. Tony got battered, and he ran in the fifth. He got hit by some more power in the fifth, and once again, he ran. When he got hit, he starts shake his head, just like shaking no. And then he ran to the gate, starts shaking his head no again. Justin comes in, hits him again, and Herb Dean runs and just fucking steps in. Tony got battered. It was one of the most amazing things I've ever seen. I never thought I would see Tony look that way in a fight, and he got fucking battered. One thing, I'm glad I didn't put this in the notes. I was like, hopefully I remember it, and I'm glad I did. But prior to the fight, Max Kellerman asked Tony Ferguson, like, why would you step up and why wouldn't you wait for Khabib? This is the fight that's been promised to you for so long. Why wouldn't you wait to fight Khabib? Why would you step up and fight someone like Tony Ferguson? And Tony Ferguson says to Max Kellerman live on TV, he's like, anybody who asks me that kind of question is just a casual. Like, I'd step in there and fight anyone. I'm not worried. I'm the best in the world. That's what he said to Max Kellerman. Just like talked him down and called him a casual. And Max was like, all right, okay. And like, as I'm watching this fight and just Tony get battered and run from Justin Gaethje, it's like, I wonder what Max Kellerman is thinking right now. Like, I want to see Max Kellerman's face watching Tony run from Justin Gaethje right now, because that's fucking interesting. There's like, ESPN has had nothing to talk about pretty much until this. And I was talking to people at the store. They were like, oh, what are you up to? I was like, oh, well, I'm excited for UFC. And they were like, oh, it's with no fans, blah, blah, blah. They were talking about, because it's the only thing ESPN is talking about. So now, like, you guys have to, welcome to my world, all right? This is what I'm interested in, and that was the only thing going on, all right? And, yeah, so I'm curious now to see. I want to watch that show or whatever. I'm surprised they're still doing that show with Max Kellerman and all them, First Take or whatever. And I want to know what his take on this fight is now. I hope he doesn't say anything too reckless, because it's still Tony Ferguson. But I'm just curious what Max Kellerman has to say after he was talked down to, after asking a legit question. Why would you take this fight against Justin Gaethje instead of waiting for Khabib? And Justin Gaethje beat that ass. He beat that ass. One of the most amazing things I've ever seen in my entire life. It's pretty fucking amazing. Justin tried to hug Tony after the fight. Tony pushed him away, and Justin was like, yo, being an asshole will get you nowhere. Right before they had made the announcement of who won the fight, Tony walked over and hugged Justin. So, like, he was like upset after the stoppage, right after, but after taking some time to cool off, he went over and hugged Justin. In the replay, you can see though that Tony tried to say that there was a bad stoppage. He was like he didn't want someone to step in and stop it. He wanted somebody to like knock him out if he's gonna lose like that. And it's like, bro, you're running and you're shaking your head no after you get hit, bro. That's a sign that you did not want to be in there anymore. That's a clear sign that you did not, that you definitely wanted Herb Dean to step in there. Like as you ran and shook your head no. After feeling that power for fucking. Dude, Justin did not get tired, is what it looked like. Like he barely slowed down at all by the fifth. He was still fucking throwing bombs by the fifth. Alright? He's throwing fucking bombs in the fifth. He looked great. And now he's set up to fight Khabib Nurmagomedov. And I'll make an early prediction right now. He knocks him out. Khabib's never really been hurt in that way. In the way he battered Tony. This is my thing. So we didn't learn too much about what would happen in that fight because they don't approach fights in two different ways. Is Khabib gonna go out there and have a kickboxing match with Justin Gaethje? Absolutely not. He's gonna want to wrestle, grapple, get to the ground. That's the basis of his game. He's not gonna want to stand there and trade with. After what we just saw, is he gonna want to go in there and trade with Justin Gaethje? Absolutely not. That's the last thing he's gonna want to do. He's gonna take him to the ground, and there was pretty much none of that in this fight. So we didn't learn pretty much what that fight would look like. We don't have an inkling of that. I think it comes down to being who's going to be the hammer and who's going to be the fucking nail. It's going to be a fucking insane fight. But I think Justin, the fact that he didn't get tired at all in that fight and how patient he was. When he hurt Tony, he didn't rush in and go and make mistakes. He just waited and just kept hurting him. Putting it on him. I think Justin will win that fight. That's my early prediction for that. What's funny also, because there's no fans and you can hear what they're saying, Justin Gaethje yelled to his team after winning, like, I'm going to go smoke a fat blunt after this. I was like, fuck yeah, Justin. You just made a fan out of me, Justin. He's like, I'm going to smoke a fat blunt after this. I thought this was going to be a short episode. It ended up being a lot longer than my usual. We'll see. I'm going to talk about this. But I thought that was pretty fucking cool. He's like, I'm going to smoke a fat blunt after this. I'm like, hell yeah, Justin. You the man. So I went back on my pre-fight prediction that Justin would win like a fool. And I should have stuck with my heart. I should have listened to my heart. But I felt bad, like, watching Tony, like, get battered, get beat up so badly in there. If you did not see it and you go back and watch that fight, it's hard to watch. By the fourth round, you're like, "Whoo, please stop. Like, get in there. Stop the fight." Like, I was just hoping that Tony could do something to get it to the ground. Because in the stand-up, he was being abused, all right? It was just like he had no answers. And he said in the post-fight, like, oh, I've been training since November, which is an extremely long time to be training for a fight. Usually, like, people's training camps are maybe about 3 months. And he's been training since November to fight Khabib in April. And then the fight got canceled, and now he's fighting a striker when he was training for a wrestler. But even in this fight, you didn't really try to take it to the ground, which I think is silly. You know, he didn't try to take it to the ground. So you're saying your excuse after the fight is, oh, I was training for someone who wasn't a grappler, but you didn't really try to grapple at all in this fight. You chose to stand for all these fights, and he got battered. And it felt pretty bad. They just changed everything. Everything's changed, you know. For 5 fights, 5 times they've been trying to book Khabib versus Tony, and it's never been able to happen. Something freak has happened. The curse is lifted, ladies and gentlemen. The curse is lifted. Tony versus Khabib will never happen, and hopefully they find the vaccine for the coronavirus now that this fight will never happen. I believe the coronavirus was created as a response to them trying to book that fight for a 5th time, and now that Justin Gaethje, it's like holes. All right. Once Stanley Yelnats took Hector Zeroni up that mountain, and he drank that water and ate them onions, my nigga. Like, once that happened, then, like, the curse was lifted. That's what Justin Gaethje just did. He just took Hector Zeroni up that mountain so that he could eat them fucking onions, my nigga, and drink from that river so he can grow strong. That's what just fucking happened. The curse is lifted. All right? Give it a week. Maybe they'll start talking about a vaccine. That's where I'm at with this. Cruz claims that the referee, Dominic Cruz, after the fight, in an interview, he claims that the referee, prior to the fight, when he came to talk to him and give the instructions of this is what I expect, yada, 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 the referee smelled like alcohol. He said the referee was drunk. So, and he said he wanted to like try to veto the referee, and he wishes fighters had that option. But he claims, like even before the fight, the ref that jumped in and stopped him 2 seconds before, like as he's standing up, 2 seconds before the round ends, he claims that guy was drunk, and he sensed that right away. He said he smelled like alcohol and cigarettes. So I'd love to see if like Cruz continues to fight. I know he was saying that, you know, like Cejudo retired after winning, and he's saying like that could have easily been him. So like had he beat Cejudo, he most likely would have retired, because Cejudo's main point was like he doesn't want to keep fighting and get beat. He'd rather retire on top. So he retires as the champion. And if Cruz had won, he most likely would have retired at that point. So maybe if he's offered to come back and fight for this vacant belt, maybe he stays. I'd like to see him versus versus Aldo in a rematch. They said they're giving it to Peter Yan. So I would not like to see Peter Yan. Or maybe I would like to see Peter Yan versus Dominic Cruz, but I don't know. Not anytime soon. Maybe Aljamain Sterling. That'd be interesting. So now we're getting Khabib versus Justin Gaethje, and who the fuck knows? I just talked about that. And it's about who's going to be the hammer. Who's going to be the hammer and the nail? I like to think that we almost got Justin Gaethje versus Conor McGregor. That almost was booked had the pandemic not happened. We got Justin Gaethje versus Conor McGregor. And after looking at the way Justin Gaethje looked against Tony Ferguson, I think John Kavanagh and Conor McGregor would have been underestimating Justin Gaethje's abilities in there. And I think it might not have turned out the way that they wanted in that one. I'm kind of like just being a big fan of McGregor, and I feel like him winning moves the sport forward. He brings more eyes, and just him being out there and performing, it just helps move the sport forward. So I think it would have been really bad for Conor McGregor moving forward had he fought Justin Gaethje without seeing that Justin Gaethje against Tony Ferguson. I think with him seeing that Justin Gaethje, at least at this point, he has the options of 5. He has those 5 rounds to watch, and he can try to make some adjustments, to his game plan, whatever it would have been going forward. But I'm really glad that he was able to see that. I think if he fought Justin Gaethje before Tony Ferguson, it might have looked pretty similar to what we just saw. So kind of glad we didn't see this. I enjoyed watching all these fights without the audience. I think I would enjoy if all marquee fights going forward were this way. Hearing the corner advice was fucking beautiful. Especially there was certain, like Ryan Spann would like talk with his coach. A lot of people were like responding and having conversations with their corner, like as the fight's going on and making real adjustments. I thought that was pretty fucking cool. As I mentioned, I thought like Duke Rufus is like aim for his chest, you'll hit his chin. I thought that was pretty fucking cool. I like hearing it. One thing that I don't know how I feel about though is the fact that the fighters can hear the commentary. The commentary have people speaking in their ear about a lot of things that are going on and things that they can say as far as like what's going on in the fight. Like, oh, he's doing this hold and he needs to do this in order to get out of it so that they can sound more insightful. And the fighters can hear them clearly. And then a few of the fighters like acknowledged the fact that the commentary team, their comments were helping them out in their fights. So I'm not sure if that's a good or a bad thing, but that's just one aspect I wasn't really anticipating, but that's just it's here we are. It's what it is now. And we'll see how it goes on Wednesday. We got more fights Wednesday. I told you guys my predictions on those fights, so I'm not going to touch on them here. We're already like at an hour and 10 minutes, so I'm not going to go over here. I'm just going to give you guys social medias. If you want to follow the podcast on Instagram and Twitter, it's at Babylon5Pod. If you want to follow my personal account, it's at my name is Jermaine. You can email the podcast at Babylon5podcast at gmail.com. You can follow this podcast at babylon5.podbean.com. You can listen to this podcast on Podbean, Stitcher, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, nigga, pretty much anywhere podcast stream. If you want to watch me play with myself, you can go to twitch.tv/Babylon5. If you have Xbox One, you want to play with me, you can add me. My gamer tag is SauceBoss414. You can check out the merch at teespring.com/store/BOFpod-shop. And you motherfuckers need to become patrons. Go to patreon.com/Babylon5. Go to patreon.com/Babylon5pod. This is episode 38. I'm Jermaine Event. I got to pee. I'm going. Peace. Y'all stay safe. Have a good one. Peace.